about to drop the IQ, fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly, suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways, where tonight we're talking about sentient species. Sentient species, having the ability to perceive, especially oneself, but that's not actually part of the definition. It's just having the ability to perceive. You would imagine then, therefore, to reflect, to process, to think, all kinds of things. And what are sentient species? And what aren't sentient species? There's a book, it's one of my favorite books in the universe. It's called The 7 Mysteries of Life by Guy Murchie, I think. I should know better. It's one of my favorite books. And it's wonderful. It's a scientific treatise on the 7 mysteries of life, which is also inclusive of life itself. And here's where I love, the modern materialists I'm always harping on, the people who imagine they're very smart because they are good at logic in our current estimation of logic and thinking. These people often wouldn't even question. They wouldn't even ask themselves, what is life? But someone as fascinatingly intelligent as Guy Murchie, who wrote the book, would ask themselves this question, and they would investigate it then. And they would investigate it from every possible angle. And they would come back with all of the information they could find on it from all throughout time and space, all sorts of different views, but just data, actually, still just gathering data. And then say, you know what? Here's what life seems to be. And even then, not claim to know for sure this is what life is or isn't. Whereas people with less intelligence will say, I know what life is, it's this. No, if you haven't actually thought deeply about it, you probably don't know what life is. And when you look that deeply into it, which you don't have to do if you read the book 7 Mysteries of Life by Guy Murchie, you look that deeply into it, then you come with a fascination, a deep awe of the universe and life itself. I know this isn't actually an advertisement for this book. In fact, we're only going to touch on the smallest sliver of the mysteries of life today, but we're doing it under this guise of looking at what is it to be sentient? What is it to be a sentient species? We say this about ourselves all the time. We're a sentient species. Well, that's neat that we can say that about ourselves, but who else can we say it about? Traditionally, what else we say it about is nothing almost nothing. We're actually usually meaning that word to mean some level of consciousness as we describe it, which we're real loose about. Real loose unless we're Guy Murchie or on that level of intelligence able to say, I don't really know. What do I mean by that? Which is an intelligent thing to do. We're pretty fuzzy on that too. So what is conscious? Who and what has consciousness? Who and what has life? What makes it a sentient species or not? What makes it a conscious species or not? What makes it requiring respect on the level that you would give a human just for being a human, which is different from what you would give a rock, right? And what I love, again, which we're not going to touch on tonight really, but I love Guy Murchie will even ask, is a rock alive? And how would we know? How would we know? And it's a good question. And he answers it quite well. But maybe someday we'll do an entire series of episodes on the 7 Mysteries of Life by Guy Murchie. In fact, I think I just convinced myself to do it because it's so good. Really, I would just like to read the book to you because if you're not going to read it yourself, oh my God, should you at least hear most of it? It's delicious. It's the most delicious nonfiction I've ever. That's why it's one of my favorite books. The other favorite book is Neverending Story, which, by the way, within about a week or so here, I'm going to be reading with, quite frankly, on his book club for August. We're doing the Neverending Story together. So every Tuesday, I believe it's every Tuesday. No, maybe it's Monday. Goodness sakes, I'm not sure. Whatever day of the week it is, I'll find out before we get there. And if you're a supporter of Frank, then you'll get access to those shows. I think if you're a supporter of me, you also do. I think I end up posting those on rogue.locals.com. Maybe, nope, not on Rockfin because there's too many people who aren't actually just supporting me here because anyone who's a supporter of anyone on Rockfin could then get access. So I think we decided just locals and maybe Substack for paid subscribers. So if you want to join us, go get your paperback copy of The Neverending Story or find a digital copy of it and you'll be able to read along with us. It's my other favorite book. You can imagine if it's on the level with Guy Murchie's Seven Mysteries of Life, it's probably a pretty good book. English teacher says so. But anyways, let's get into Sentient Species. Let's talk a little bit about this facet of life here. And here we go. This is rogueways.org, where you can find my books. I won't say they're as good as Guy Murchie's books, but they're better in a different way. Totally different books. Channeled source messages with the key of transformational healing and all endings are beginnings, and also channeled fictional novel trilogies, actually, in the sine curve of aeons, with Trinity's Genesis, A Future Once Removed, being the finale of the trilogy, Earth, A Trough in Time being the second book, and the first being Phytalis. Sine Curve of Aeons is that trilogy. It's a fantastic fictional romp through the aeons of civilization. You can also schedule a session with me. I do past life tarot. I do life path tarot. I do sound healing. I do blessings. I do all kinds of work with people one-on-one. I also do coaching and talk sessions. If you just want to learn about or find ways to transform the physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual aspects of your life, you can read the testimony of the people who have worked with me in those ways. Always growing that testimony list there. You can look into doing ceremony with me, which is something I do in person. So if people apply for that, and then we can work that out together. You can go to the shop and you can check out the Oregon Lotus votives that are left here for people who want some beautiful, exceptionally powerful, energetic upliftment in their space. Also, the Oregon pillars here. And again, the books and other things are also here in the shop. There's even some Oregon pendants still hanging out here with their gold foil and more. You can also come to rogueways.substack.com, where I would love to have you as a subscriber. Paid subscriber would be ideal. And there also is room for free subscribers. It's a good way to just keep in touch and get some free content, some glimpses of some of the paid content. And then if you're a paid supporter, thank you. Thank you for supporting what you love. You keep me and the show and the amazing content on rogueways.substack.com going. So let's get into this. So really what we're talking about today is animals who speak, animals who can communicate. And I'll say right now, if you already know me, you already know that I know that all animals can communicate. But not every human believes that or understands that. But there are many animals that actually can talk. I mean, like they can literally make words come out of their mouths. So, and we're all pretty familiar with a lot of these, I'm sure. But yeah, they have beluga whales, apparently. Knock was a beluga whale. Captured by the American Navy as part of their Cold Ops program during the Cold War. You know, they're still using sea life. We've talked about this on Rogueways before. They train dolphins, they train seals, they train belugas, and belugas and other, what are they called? Cephalopods? Maybe that's it. There's a specific like melon that they have in their head that makes them. A beluga is one. Most whales are in this family too, and dolphins too, and all of them are quite intelligent beings. We'll come back to some of them later in the show, but this babbling beluga began to make unusual vocalizations during his time in the Navy, with the resulting burbling sounding oddly similar to a pair of humans talking in the distance. In one incident, a trainer thought someone was telling him to get out of the water, and it took researchers a while to figure out that knock was the source of the noise. They accidentally trained him to speak, basically, or at least to mimic the rhythm and amplitude of human speech. So he was perhaps trying to actually, they say mimic, just mimicking, which even babies do, right? Or bonding with his keepers. But I mean, I really always find it to be exceptionally ignorant to not also wonder if he was actually trying to make words And he knew what all the words meant, and he was trying to like communicate back to us because we're too stupid to understand his language, which they've shown over and over again that these especially these marine mammals have their own language. Dolphins especially. Elephant also learned human speech. It's quite hard, they say, for most animals to mimic, but Koshik, the elephant from South Korean Everland Zoo, didn't let that stop him. By placing the tip of his trunk inside his mouth, the inventive pachyderm was able to modulate his voice. They naturally have a deep voice that's often out of human hearing range, so Koshik alters the dimensions of his mouth with his trunk to get the higher pitches used in human speech. They don't think he understood the meanings of the words he was mimicking. But again, I don't know. I think it's ignorant to assume that. But that's scientists' job, is to assume that all animals are just like practically inert matter that just happens to like move around and eat food. There's a speaking seal. Seals naturally bark, they said, but Hoover, an orphaned harbor seal adopted by a family in Maine, didn't stop there. Apparently, he had a ravenous hunger for ground up fish, consuming it like a vacuum cleaner and thus obtaining his name. He seemingly formed a relationship with those delivering him fish, picking up and mimicking their catchphrases. When the seal grew too big for his home and was moved to the New England Aquarium, he fell silent, presumably unnerved by the unfamiliar surroundings and company. He eventually bounced back, though, and after 5 years, he began to demand that people hurry and come over here. Oh my God. I want to see if there's a video of this one. Oh, maybe we can hear this. Tell me if you can hear anything at all. Actually, let me make sure my volume's up. All right, let's see. Whoa, I hope you could hear that. That's crazy. That's exactly like a human voice. I would not have thought that was a seal if you just played that for me. He very clearly said, "Get over here," and "Hey," and "Hurry up." I'm going to play it one more time. I think you can hear. I think I figured out the sound. Wow. That's really sad, actually. They took him away from his humans. I mean, I guess he had to, but yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you can hear it there. Thank you, Dakota. Here's Mishka, the talking dog.
Love you, Mishka. I love you.
I love you. I love you. Good girl. I love you. I love you.
That's pretty good. Some of those really did sound like "I love you." Good job, Mishka. We have lyrebirds as well. Lyrebirds are expert mimics capable of replicating sounds from their environment, such as chainsaws, cars, and human voices. I think these are the ones, too, that can do like R2-D2 and songs. So yeah, they picked up snippets of songs and they pass it on to each other. Orangutans also. They trained a young orangutan named Rocky to mimic their tone and pitch of voice at the Durham University. Apparently, the resulting vocalizations resembled those of the character Chewbacca from Star Wars. Let's see if they have this. Oh, I think I already have this later in the show, but okay, we're not going to listen to it anyways. Ravens are also notorious for being able to speak. I think there's something about where they had to like clip their tongue or something. But I've seen ravens that don't seem to have that done to them, and they seem to be speaking somewhat clearly. A white-necked raven called Mischief is quite happy to mimic words and coughs for treats. There's an articulate orca. Killer whales are surprisingly intelligent creatures despite their bulk. Why would their bulk have anything to do with their intelligence? And researchers have recently discovered they possess a penchant for mimicry. Wiki, a 14-year-old orca at the Marineland Aquarium in France, was able to pick up and reproduce a series of sounds presented to her via tape recording. I cannot even handle that they still keep orcas in cages. Like, what actually is wrong with you? There's something wrong with people who can sit and watch an absolutely tortured animal and just laugh and smile. Like, you're so disconnected from yourself. I want to feel compassion for you, but I actually kind of hate you. There's anything that inspires my um my deep hatred and vengeance, it's harming animals and children. So I just don't get it. And people are like, "No, people don't know." I'm like, "Well, you have to be dumb not to know." Like, and it's not true. You'd be so traumatized that you're just not connected with yourself. I just can't imagine. I came into this world understanding how everything felt, so I'm not sure why some people just cannot do it. You get over your trauma so you can heal the animals, guys. God. There's conversational parrots. Parrots, of course, are one of the most famous animal communicating or communicating animals, I should say. Again, all of this is assumed to be mimicry. None of it is assumed to be intelligence. Um, Starlings are another one of those birds. They can mimic anything. Uh, there's a musk duck in Australia, is the only known duck or goose to mimic human speech. One particular, going by the name Ripper, displays his talent by shouting, "You bloody fool." Let's see if we can get this. Is there a recording? Here he is. Let's see what he says. Oh, I did hear it that time. "You bloody fool." It is less clear than some. There's also a parrot, just by the way, I didn't pull him up today, and I doubt I can just find him randomly, but I've seen this parrot that this guy is training. It's not just mimicking words. He's not just responding out of training. He can have completely brand new objects brought to him, and his owner will hand it to him and say, "What material is this?" And between wood, plastic, and glass, he nails it almost every time. And he'll do it by clicking it with his beak. And it's like he's feeling the reverberation, he's hearing the sound it makes, and then he's determining what the material is. So that's intelligence, right? And that's communication. That's not just reaction. You can't do that with a completely novel object you've never seen before unless you are intelligent enough to know what the words actually mean and then use them at the appropriate time. And that is what communication is. So this is happening more and more. And I'm more surprised that it surprises people than I am. I'm not surprised that it happens. I'm surprised it's taken us this long to start to understand that animals are more intelligent than we treat them. So this is the orangutan. It keeps almost coming up and then not coming up. Let's try to find it another way. The orangutan who speaks like a human. This is the link that isn't working. Maybe it's this one. Because that's not working again. Oh, did you catch that? There was a Kamala Harris donation request right before this video. They know me so well. Here we go.
The orangutan was able to mimic human speech as it learned new sounds from an international team of scientists. They may seem more like grunts, but the orangutan you heard is showing some key vocal skills. Rocky was able to control his tone and pitch to repeat the random vowel sounds made by the researchers. Before the study, scientists believed great apes lacked the ability to control their voices. That meant they were limited to a few dozen preset sounds and couldn't learn to produce new ones, making it a mystery how human speech could have evolved. But Rocky's sounds were cross-referenced against 12,000 hours of tapes from over 100 other orangutans, and the data showed they were different. Rocky was able to learn new sounds and control them.
Okay, well, we want to actually hear the sounds, dude. Why do you pretend this is a news thing and then we don't actually get to see the thing you're talking about? God, here, let's see if it's up here.
Foundation for it may have already existed the last time humans and orangutans had a... For Newsy, I'm right.
No, you suck and your thing is stupid. Okay, well, I guess we won't hear the orangutan speaking, but again, they're saying he's mimicking human speech. He also was clearly interacting with a... what do they call them? Maybe communication boards. A lot of nonverbal people will use them, and orangutans can too. And again, they use them appropriately to request the things they want, to communicate ideas, and more. So it's interesting to me that people are like, yeah, but they're trained to. Like, well, but you're trained to too. So, like, what does that make you a dumb, just mimicking kind of like inert matter that happens to move? Or what? Like, what are you saying about yourself, really? This is probably the same 8 animals we already talked about. The American crow, the common raven, gray parrot, bottlenose dolphin. That was not on our previous list, and it is true. They are effective communicators. They have a sophisticated language themselves. So do prairie dogs, by the way, and probably every single animal. We keep being like, whoa, scientists have discovered that this animal has a really advanced language within its own group. You're like, well, what? Why wouldn't it? What do you mean? They're like, bees have a whole entire system of like scents and chemicals and like wiggles and dances. And I'm like, yeah, so do we. What? I just, and it's funny. It's funny. It's another one of those things. Oh, good. They have prairie dog on this list. Prairie dogs, highly communicative. They have a whole language. They have a whole advanced society. They have a whole system. They babysit for each other. It's stupid that we think that these animals aren't deeply intelligent. So anyways, animal communication is a whole field. This is not the type of animal communication that, for example, Catherine O'Shea does that we're going to be talking about and more. This is just what we recognize as, again, materialist scientists recognize that animals do communicate with one another. This is the definition on Spookopedia. Animal communication is the transfer of information from one or a group of animals, the sender or senders, to one or more other animals. So that means right now you and I are animal communicating. Did you notice? I'm a sender and you're a receiver. It's so complex. They say this affects the current or future behavior of the receivers, which is just a really stupid way to say that the receiver understands and acts accordingly. It's a stupid way to say that two beings are exchanging information effectively. I don't know why we have to be so stupid about it. There's something in us that once we finally really deeply understand and admit to ourselves how intelligent animals and nature in general is, that we'll have to stop being such assholes to nature and animals. We'll have to stop keeping them in cages and keeping them on leashes for our own entertainment. And I'm not saying anyone with an animal is. I used to be really extreme about it. I used to be like, anybody who has a cat or a dog or any sort of animal is an asshole. I literally was like this. This was one of my overreactions to an early spiritual awakening, which almost everyone has. People have a spiritual awakening and they go hardcore deep into like the extreme of whatever came through for them. And so this was mine, and it was silly. It's not true at all. But it is true if you look around that you can see the people who just have animals for their own sort of pleasure and don't actually care about the animal as an autonomous soul, right? As an autonomous being. And there's a lot of people who are in between. Like they got the animal just kind of like selfishly and it's just like a thing that they got, but like they start to grow into understanding, oh, this is a whole soul. It has its whole own thing going on. It has its own needs, its own wants, its own desires, its way of feeling about me, its way of communicating. Just like everyone I've ever met. So anyways, this is a really, really bland article about how animals communicate. They're like, here's visual communication modes. They gesture. They have facial expressions. And again, anyone with even just like a modicum of intelligence knows this. Like if a dog growls at you, is it angry? Yes. Okay, well, you've succeeded in understanding that gestures and facial expressions as well as sound are part of a dog's communication. Gaze following. Oh, I love this actually. Like dogs do this too, right? You've seen it if you think about it. Even for a second, a dog will be hanging out and suddenly they'll just like look somewhere and like very with deep honor. They will look somewhere. They're actually addressing. They're like telling you, like, look, there's a threat over there, and you're supposed to feel honored and look there, and then they feel good. They've done their job. They can color change. They have bioluminescence. So some animals, especially deep sea animals, will blink at one another, or fireflies, which, yes, I've still never seen in real life. There's auditory, which means they talk, but for some reason we're going to pretend like it's not talking and be like, oh, it's just sounds. They just happen to mean things. like, like birds, like people. There are people who think that birds just like happen to make sounds accidentally, and that song you hear is just like a thing that's just like falling out of its face on accident. Like that's how they think about it. I've seen little sparrows, I think they were. We were in a garage when I was young. I don't know. We were probably skipping school. I don't know. We were smoking weed in this person's garage, and the garage door was open. And these two birds flew in. They clearly like had a nest in there or something, and it was a male and a female. And they flew in and they sat on like the rafters, and they were like tweeting at each other for like a while. And it was really, we were joking. I wasn't joking. I knew they were actually having a fight, but everyone else was joking. And they're like, look at that. The woman's like yelling at the guy, like he fucked up, like he didn't bring enough food, or he didn't bring the right sticks, or he did something wrong. And she's like calling him on his shit. And everyone's like laughing because they think they're just attributing this to them, like that it's not actually what's going on. And I'm like, no, that's literally what's happening right now. It's not. It's funny. You can laugh. I'm not saying don't laugh. Do whatever you want. I'm just saying that is actually what's going on right now. Like eventually the birds like looked at us and then looked at each other and then like flew away as though they were like, we shouldn't be fighting in front of these people. I don't know. But it was so obvious. And if you spend enough time paying attention to animals, it's obvious to you too. But there's this thing that scientists do also, which is to imagine that you are the stupid one because you're not being objective enough. If you are projecting onto the animals your understanding of what it would mean if you were doing that, which is, it's not unfair to ask yourself that question. It's not unfair to have that in your view, like, yeah, right, and through your window through which you're viewing the world. Am I projecting myself onto? Am I making assumptions here? It's good to know that. And also, there's a reason why we can generally understand almost everything around us, and it's because it is us. And so, to not project would often be a mistake, actually. So it's just like logical fallacies. Just because it fits the format of a logical fallacy doesn't mean it's not true. It just means you have to ask a little bit harder, is it true? Because this isn't a good enough reason to know something. It's an illogical reason. Doesn't mean it's false, right? To project onto these other beings doesn't mean it's false. It's just you have to be careful. You could be misinterpreting, right? You have a larger window for error. There's electricity the animals use to communicate. There's scent the animals use to communicate. And I'm also reading through this to tell you humans do all of this too. Even, well, I'm going to call it bioluminescence because I can see your aura and it's communicating to me and it's never been wrong. So like people are like, oh, you have tooting your own horn. I'm like, I'm just being honest. And if you see auras, you will also know they can't lie, actually. It's even more effective than listening to people's words is to look at their auras. So I'm going to call that bioluminescence. It's in some type of light you're producing. I'm perceiving it. Olfactory too. Have you ever, this might sound messed up. There's a handful of people I've met in my life that have the same smell. And all of them that I know of were, I'll say, sexual predators. Why did they all smell the same? And so then the next time I smell that smell, I was like, I don't like you. And I hope I'm not being an asshole. But it's one of those things like I might be projecting on you. I'm not willing to find out. You have a smell. You have a smell about you, and it's the smell of a predator. So I bet, and we talk about pheromones and the pheromones role in attraction, like humans are communicating with scent. They are. And electricity. And then they talk about touch via fighting, via mating, huddling, and more. Seismic communication, like stomping. or sending reverberations down through some common substrate. They talk about insects doing this. And again, maybe it sounds stupid, but like we do this too. Have you ever been mad and stomped around the house? Like you're sending a message. Communication received. I don't know, thermal. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. So anyways, there's a lot more to this, and this is all, it's a whole field of science, but that's like the animal communication that's kind of like, duh, everything that we think of as living seems to do at least some, if not all of these things. But I'm talking about there's more than this. I don't know if you guys have seen these dogs and cats now too, who will use these buttons to communicate things. So let's see, which one do we want to check into here? There's so many now, but for a minute there was just like a couple of these dogs. They have these big pads. They're down on the ground. They're grouped usually by sort of category. Like here's some verbs, here's some nouns, here's some names of the people and other animals in the family. By color, they group them. And which is, again, it's similar to what we do for nonverbal people. So let's go back. I want to see, actually, I think this one might be good. Copper, the talking dog. I think this is one of the first ones I saw.
Pool outside, good girl.
So she said, she asked for pool outside and she got outside pool, and here she is just splashing around.
Show me, what do you want? Copper wants some. What does Copper want? Copper wants to eat. Good girl. Here you go. Little piece of cheese. Good girl.
Copper wants to eat. Copper gets cheese.
You want to play ball or play with the pig? Okay, ready? Here. Get it.
Ball or pig, and she chooses ball. There's some that are really also, maybe we can find another one, where they're clearly putting together like somewhat complex sentences and questions. So hopefully this will be one of those.
Hi, Bunny.
Hi, my name is Alexis Devine, and this is my dog Bunny the conversationalist.
Yesterday, Bunny went to play tango. Bunny want to play tango today? Yes. Okay.
Yes, go play. So
So
it's like,
and switched.
there was somewhere like one of the girls in the family was gone, and the dog went up to their little pad, and here you can see like how complex this pad is. Like there's no way you would accidentally be answering the question perfectly. Like you actually have to understand what they're asking you and then choose the right response. Anyways, she was asking about one of the girls in the family. She literally said like, where is Sarah, let's say? And the mom or whatever was like, Sarah's gone. And then the dog went to the other side of the mat and said like, I'm sad, Sarah, go. Like, it's not an accident. And it's also not, you can't train an animal to have that complex level of understanding of both when someone's gone, absent, that they're not here, and that you feel sad about it, and to communicate that for every single interaction they have. So if you watch some of these long enough, you'll start to see what I mean, that there's too many of them that are too complex of thoughts, ideas, and feelings being communicated at the perfect time for it to be just people messing around and trying to pretend like their dogs are really smart. And I remember this in, I guess probably like 1990, when I was like 10 or 11, I was reading a lot of Dean Koontz and Michael Crichton. Those were like my favorite authors at the time. And Dean Koontz, I think it was, had a book about a dog, a million books, but one of them was about a dog who could talk using Scrabble letters. So he would go up and like spell out whole sentences, really complex. And that was like mind blowing at the time, right? But now we have this, and this is actually becoming somewhat common, as you saw by these lists and lists and lists of dogs and cats that I could choose from to see them communicating in this way. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So So they're talking, right? And they're using human words to do it. They know exactly what they mean. Isn't that intelligence? Isn't that consciousness? Isn't that a prescient being? Sentient. Sorry, what did I say? Prescient? Yeah, that too. They are also quite prescient. So there's those. I'm having deja vu too, Dakota. I don't actually know if I've done this episode before. It's just a new version of it because that's very possible, but also who knows. But yeah, there's also people who teach people how to just understand their animals. So maybe you don't want to invest in this whole mat and then like train your animal how to use it and all of this stuff. You can just communicate with your animal. And this is considered a spiritual skill, but like all spiritual skills, I'm going to tell you, they're actually just natural skills. And the question isn't, can you do it? The question is, do you want to? And are you going to take the time to open up this skill in yourself? And part of the question might also be like, does it terrify you? Because I think it terrifies people, actually. I think part of the terror is to imagine that our animals are very, very intelligent and also have been like watching us the whole time. And we're really ourselves in front of our animals, right? Like if we can't let our guard down anywhere else, we can in front of our animals. So they know our secrets. And then like when we start imagining are they this intelligent? Then we might feel judged, right? Then we might suddenly feel with them how we feel with most people, which is what we're trying to get away with or from by being with our animals, right? What do they say? Like this is where our blood pressure goes down when we're with animals. But the truth is animals are a bit maybe better than us in a way because they don't judge us. They're like more connected to unconditional love and like naturally and energy fields. And I've told the story a million times. I'll just mention the time that there was a poltergeist like or demonic or whatever you want to call it entity in my house, and I could feel it and things were moving, objects would be thrown at me and the like. But my dog could know. My dog knew it was there. My dog would like, I told of the time that it got really intense. He actually stood up, stared at the area where the energy was coming from, or the entity was, and his hackles rose and he growled. So they can sense things. And we might call them psychic. But I think it's actually a little bit different than how we think about psychic. We think about psychic as being able to know things that are sort of unknowable or know things from the future, for example, or from really far away. Whereas animals are much more like they just know what you're thinking. And they know it probably in the same way that I can see auras, right? Probably in the same way that energy healing works. Like it's just beyond words. It's information that's just in the air. So I'm just scrolling through this woman's page because she's an animal communicator and she teaches people to be animal communicators too, at any level, like introductory to advanced or whatever. And I just pulled this up so that we can all remember you can teach this to people because anybody can learn it. Anybody can learn to be more present with themselves and therefore with the energy field or the information field that is around us. A la Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic fields, if you want to be in the materialist realm about it, or just a la soul. Soul is just information, right? And we all have it. In fact, we all have it. Animals have it. Nature has it. Even things we don't consider to be alive have information fields that are inherent to them, which is a soul, which is some kind of intelligence, which is consciousness. But we get into the realms now where the fearful and dull can't follow. I don't want to create an account. Well, then we won't read what the New York Times has to say about it. We'll move on to more interesting things. Here's how to communicate with your animal in 7 simple steps. They say, begin with a meditation that will give you a calm and tranquil mind. Seek out a pleasing and tranquil atmosphere for you and your animal. This is actually just a good way to begin with any practice you're ever going to do. And in fact, this already gets you into your own field, which is already aware of all of the information everywhere at all times and spaces. You just don't know it. You don't trust it. You haven't practiced it enough. But you do know that you have this access because you have had psychic experiences and you have had spiritual experiences, whatever you want to call it. You have. Everyone has. And the easiest and most common one is that everyone has had the experience of thinking of someone and then they call. That's the easiest one, right? So if you've done that once, then you have access to information that is not immediately, seemingly available, that you're getting in some extrasensory way, which is actually just not extrasensory. It's just a sense you have. In fact, this is another thing that Guy Murchie does so well in the 7 Mysteries of Life, is he talks about the things that we pretend are immaterial and we pretend are extrasensory when actually all we have is evidence that there's some sensory apparatus we don't understand yet, or there's some matter that we don't understand yet, or some energy that we don't understand yet, some information transfer we don't understand yet. That doesn't make it bizarre. It doesn't make it insane. It doesn't make it woo-woo. But it does make people, again, ignorant if they fail to understand what I just said. So we all have these skills. So she says to begin with a meditation that will give you this calm and tranquil mind. And that's anything. I mean, that is just you sitting somewhere calmly and breathing deeply. You don't have to have a special meditation. You don't have to find a guided meditation. You can. That's great. You can just sit and just breathe. That's just you getting calm and tranquil. It's okay. So do it somewhere you like. Be outside and grounded if you want. That's cool too. I haven't even read this honestly before now. This is exactly the type of thing that I share with people too. Ask your teachers and guides to help you. Whatever you think that is. You think that's just your higher self and you're all that is? Good. Ask your higher self to help you. You think there's God? Ask God. You think there's source? Ask source. You think there's angels? Ask the angels. Don't ask the bad guys. Leave them out of it. Ask your good, true, and beautiful, whatever you think exists. And if you think nothing exists, then again, ask your highest self, the highest version of you that exists. She says, say your animal's name telepathically to get his or her attention. That is, think of his or her name and visualize your animal as you say his or her name in your mind. If you say it out loud, I think you're going beyond. We're trying to do this internally, right? So in your mind, in your heart, say your animal's name. What I would say is to feel love for your animal and visualize them will make this even stronger. For some reason, she's saying to send a picture of his or her physical body to him or her along with their name. So you don't have to do that. Unless you're doing it for yourself. It's much easier than this, actually. You can skip this step. I'll give you permission to skip it. So as you're visualizing, what I would do is visualize making connection with them. Visualize you two talking together. Just see it. We're talking together right now, right? As though you were using words to talk. Imagine it. And she's saying, ask if there's anything your pet would like you to do for them. Imagine they are sending the answer back to you through a picture, a thought, a sound, a smell, or a feeling. Your imagination is powerful. Accept whatever you receive. I would say that's pretty good. I think what's even better, say, do you need anything from me? And then just wait. In fact, I just sent this out on Substack. I think today, actually, there was a practice suggested. And part of this instruction that I was giving was that if you use the method where you are going to open a box and you don't know what's in the box, or you're going to have a screen in front of you that is pure blank and anything can appear on it, those are two good ways to receive a message from your animal or anything good, true, and beautiful, because you don't know what it's going to be and you know that ahead of time. So you're already setting up the neutrality that you need to receive a clear image or word or sensation or memory or smell, like she said, sound, feeling, anything could be on the screen or in the box. So it's a good way to use. And you can use this for remote viewing. You can use this for any communication with anything, like I said, or even receiving messages from your higher self, your guides and allies. So yeah, you can do this with your animal. So I like the box, I like the screen because they're neutral, because anything could be there. So in this method, in my method, you would pull up the screen or pull up the box, and you would be like, put into this box or put onto this screen what it is you want me to receive. And then you will, after maybe a breath, then let the screen show you something, or open the box and see what's in there. She says to always acknowledge the answer, whatever you receive. Thank your guides and your animal for their willingness to communicate. That's a good step. And she says just continue to then ask or communicate with them. And again, it's even easier than what she's saying. The other thing you can do with your animal, and here's Catherine's page to remind us. Catherine is actually the one that gave all of us this method over and over and over again, as she came on Rogue Ways many times to do animal communication with people's pets, both that have passed on and who are still alive. She's a very gifted animal communicator and more, and healer. And I don't know what else she calls herself. That is what I call her. And Catherine gave us this method, and here she is at soullightpetservices.org. So you can go to soullightpetservices.org if you want someone I trust to communicate with your animal for you. So definitely fantastic service here. But she gave us the method of you just sit in any kind of a still and calm place, and you just call forward your animal's soul in love. Just say, I love you. Will you come talk to me? They don't have to be in front of you. They can be anywhere. And you just imagine them there. You can hug them, send them love. The more love you connect to them with, the better it works. And then you can just tell them things, and you can just do it in English. You don't have to like send images or figure out how they'll just receive it in the way they need to, because on the soul level, it's all just information. And just like all of us, we all receive information whatever way works for us. So you can just be like, hey, I really need you to calm down right now. I love you so much, but right now we need to be quiet, or whatever. And you can do this. And you might be amazed at how easy it is. And you might accidentally even get messages back. You might not even pull up a screen or open a box. You might just be getting like, oh, I think they really want their yellow ball back or whatever. So, and if you don't want to get into all that and you don't trust yourself to do it, or you just don't want to risk it if there's an emergency or something, I highly trust Catherine. And again, there's so many episodes on Rogue Ways of Catherine coming to communicate with the animals, and everyone who experienced that knows how amazing she is. So go check those episodes out if you haven't before. But I also had my brother on 3 years ago, I guess. What? It was older than that. Oh no, this was the second one. Yeah, 3 years ago. And he got to spend, God, I think about 10 years swimming with humpback whales. And so this is an episode from 3 years ago. It's called Whales in Every Dimension. And so he has all these stories of communicating with whales. And he also was trained to not project our human ideas onto them, and not take this as communication necessarily, and not pretend that they're talking to us or any of these things. But eventually, after 10 years, and he had more contact with humpback whales than any humpback scientist, any marine biologist. Like he had a very special job that he got to be with humpback whales in the wild of their own free will. No one was chasing them or trying to get them. They would just come up and interact for 10 years. And eventually he had to admit there are things that just don't make sense unless the whales knew exactly what was going on and were communicating with humans. And one story he tells about this, he has a billion, and I don't remember how many we got to in this episode, but it's a super fun episode because he talks all about interacting with these whales. But in one, they were called at some point to come and try to free a whale that was trapped in a fishing net, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's super heavy. It's just like thousands of pounds or something. It's way too heavy. And so it slowly like drowns the whale, basically. Remember, they breathe air, so they have to come up to the surface, and it saps you of energy. If you can't get back to the surface, you drown. So they got out there. It's kind of dangerous, but they're trained to do it. They have all the right gear and everything. They're out there, and for hours and hours and hours, They're cutting all of this tangle off of this whale. It's on his fins, it's on his body, it's like everywhere. And so they're cutting and cutting and cutting and trying to get it, and they're just not going to give up. And they finally, after hours and hours, like freed this whale. And he was like, everybody was just crying because just like you put this much like love and energy into this animal. They free this whale. The whale kind of swims off, and the whale is like kind of, I don't remember if the whale's like fin slapping or doing something that was like, seems like it's happy. Seems like it's happy to be free. It's also had been through a really stressful time. So maybe he didn't have a lot of energy. But he's swimming off. And then very shortly after that, within minutes, he said 360 degrees around them, there were whales breaching, jumping up, slapping back into the water over and over and over again, 360 degrees around them. He's 10 years. He had never seen anything like that from whales. No whale behavior like that. So again, you can be the perhaps too objective materialist scientist who says, we can't know what that means. We can't project our human emotions onto that. We can't know. Or you can be a normal person and say, yeah, the whole community was celebrating that their friend was saved and was not going to die. They were happy. They were celebrating, and they were also perhaps giving thanks and gratitude and saying, thank you so much for putting this much effort into saving our friend, our mother, our sister, our brother, whatever. So yeah, they communicate. I'll just tell my own story, and I'll have this picture up here because this is a mother and a calf, and this is what I got to go down with him the last season. I think that he was down there. Finally got to go down there, and this is out in the Caribbean. It's off of the Dominican Republic. It's off of Turks and Caicos, and it's a very special whale nursery, and it's protected. The boat he was on and one other boat are the only boats that are out there in this huge, huge, huge territory of ocean. The ocean floor rises up. It's called the Silver Bank, and in that place, the whales like to have their babies because it's shallow enough. It's protected. There's not a lot of predators. Shallow enough they can easily go up and breathe. They're kind of exhausted because they've like swam all this way, and then they give birth, and now they're like watching this baby, and it's just a lot. It's a lot. So they're out there, and they actually have learned, because they don't get chased and they don't get harassed, and there's only 2 boats and hundreds of miles or something. They've learned that these humans are pretty cool distractions for their babies. That's what it seems like, right? Because they will purposely come up and find our boat. And we're off in a little boat, just like 6 people in this tiny boat, like off. There's a couple of different of them, and from the big boat that we stay on for like a week. And this little tiny boat, we're out there, and the moms bring their babies. They seem to bring their babies so that because their babies are like, what is this? Like, just like a baby is. The babies are like trying to figure out what life's all about. And here's this weird thing floating on the surface, and a bunch of other tiny little weird things get off of it and splash around and are like clumsy and stupid and loud. And the babies are just like, whoa. So the baby's distracted. The mom gets to have a rest. And this would happen over and over again. So it's clearly like this established pattern. Well, I got to get into the water multiple times with whales, and it was life-changing. It was beautiful. One of these times, I got in with a baby and a mom. And the mom was sleeping, and the baby was just kind of peeking out from behind her at us and like kind of checking us out. And I was like, I know that you can hear me. And the baby like looked right at me, and I was like, whoa, can you really hear me? And he kind of like cocked his head or something. And I was like, okay, if we're communicating right now, I'm just like speaking in English in my thoughts. I'm just directing it at the whale. Like, if you can communicate, if you can hear me right now, I'm going to wave my right fin or my right arm, and you wave yours too. And I wave my right fin, and he waves his right fin. He wasn't waving it before. He waved it right when I said so and did it. And then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna do my left. You do your left. And I did my left, and he did his left. And I was like, well, now I'm gonna like spin to my side. You spin to your side. And he did. And I did it the other way, and he did it the other way. And I was like, wow, this is so cool to communicate with you. You're so amazing. I'm so excited. I love you. I'm like getting really excited. And he's like coming towards me. And this baby whale swam all the way up to me, and my face and his face eventually were like 10 feet away. And at that moment, I realized it's super cool to talk to a baby whale. It's super amazing. He knew exactly what I meant. It's very cool that we can create this trust. It's very cool that he's coming right up to my face, but also a baby whale. I don't even remember. Maybe they're like 60 feet long. Like they're massive. Like I was probably the size of one of his fins. And he's a baby. And now he's like 10 feet from my face. And I got scared and my body like constricted. And I went, I breathed in. I had my, tube on or whatever, but I like sucked in air and kind of like got startled and it freaked him out. And I saw him like twitch and just like dive back down right before he got to me. And went back to his mom and I was like saying like, I'm sorry, I got scared. I hope I didn't scare you. You're so cool. Thank you for talking to me. I was like, magical. And then I realized that my brother and everyone else was screaming at me because I had drifted away from the group by like much too far to be safe in the ocean. So I had gotten lost in the interaction though. And I'll say again, someone who wants to be really, really objective could be like, well, we don't know for sure. This baby could have just picked you to come up to because you had floated away from the group and that was interesting. And that could be, but I'm going to say that happened to me a couple more times where both the mothers and the babies would understand me and like come towards me or look at me or try to interact with me more. And it didn't happen to anybody else. Not because they're not capable of doing it, but because nobody's thinking to do it and nobody's trying to do it. And nobody believes they can do it. So if you went out with the whales and you had this mentality, you too could communicate with them. It's not a special thing. It's special. It's very special. It's very beautiful. But it's not unique. It's not unique. So super cool. Again, life-changing. The conversations I had with some of the adult whales were pretty incredible. I don't even really understand all of the content I got from them. I still am parsing it out sometimes. Beautiful, beautiful creatures. Yeah, this episode's also worth going back to if you didn't check it out at the time. Whales in Every Dimension. It's on Rockfin at least, if not other places or Rogue Ways. But Coco the gorilla is perhaps the most prolific communicator, interspecies communicator that is knowable by anyone, right? Because we could say there's plenty of animals that maybe communicate with humans more than Coco, but in the way I just described instead of in the way Coco, and Coco was taught sign language. I'm sure you've heard of Coco. It says Coco was a female Western lowland gorilla. She was born in the San Francisco Zoo. She lived most of her life at the Gorilla Foundation's preserve in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Her full name, I guess, is Hanabiko, which is firework child in Japanese in origin. It's a reference to her date of birth, which is the 4th of July. She gained public attention upon a report of her having adopted a kitten as a pet and naming him All Ball, which the public perceived as her ability to rhyme. Her instructor and caregiver, Francine Patterson, reported that Coco had an active vocabulary of more than 1,000 signs. So sign language, American Sign Language, or what she called gorilla sign language. Oh, sorry, it really is gorilla. It's not American. It's similar but different. So this put her vocabulary at the same level as a 3-year-old human. In contrast to other experiments attempting to teach sign language to non-human primates, Patterson simultaneously exposed Coco to spoken English from an early age, and it was reported that Coco understood approximately 2,000 words of spoken English, which is also similar, I'd say. I think a 3-year-old might have more than that spoken ability, but it is similar. Most humans have a higher ability to understand what's said to them than they have to speak back. For example, if you're learning a foreign language or if you're a toddler. Coco's life and learning process has been described by various collaborators in books, peer-reviewed scientific articles, and on a website. So yeah, so let's get to some of her actual communications because they're kind of groundbreaking. Earth-shattering, really. And so, oh God, whatever. We won't look at this because it also requires you sign in. Oh, and when did Coco die? I guess 2018, June of 2018, 6 years ago. And now she's more powerful than ever. More powerful than you could possibly imagine. So yeah, Patterson, I can't imagine getting to know Coco like most of your life and then Coco dies. Oh. She officially adopted her for $12,000. So she taught Mr. Rogers the sign for love and cradled the children's TV show host in her lap. Oh my God. How did I miss that? Mr. Rogers is my favorite. She became friends with Leonardo DiCaprio. She grabbed William Shatner by the testicles after he entered her cage and repeatedly told the animal he loved her. Wow. That sounds intense. She caused actor and comedian Robin Williams to crack up laughing by raising his shirt and tickling him. Here's her with her cat. To look into the eyes of a 300-pound gorilla and have her tell you what she's thinking is truly humbling, Betty White said after visiting her in 2012. She jammed with the Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist Flea in 2016. Flea said, "This is the greatest thing that could happen. Is the day that I will never forget in my life." Here's her jamming with Flea.
Play a little tune for. Sounds like that's it.
Wow.
She picks the guitar.
Okay.
I love it. Oh, wait.
You're a very curious gorilla. Very curious, you know.
Ooh, that was a good one.
Oh, you really like to know.
That's pretty adorable. She was featured in documentaries, including Coco, A Talking Gorilla, National Geographic. Okay, so that's Coco's life. Here's Coco. Coco's best moments. It's only 2 minutes. Let's see what we can get.
Coco knows. She picked the one I think it is. Sweet.
Coco, the beloved gorilla known for her warm personality and sign language skills, has died at the age of 46. She graced the cover of National Geographic twice.
Thank you, Coco.
Oh,
And
here she
Robin
is.
Williams called meeting her a mind-altering experience.
Tickle. Tickle. Tickle.
Coco rose to fame in the early 1970s when an animal psychologist by the name of her vocabulary started with simple words.
If you watch Coco closely, she's learning to put her fingertips to her mouth to sign eat. And her fingertips together to sign more.
Coco stunned the world when butterfly was added to her terminology, a complicated word for gorillas to learn because it involves the difficult maneuver of interlocking their small thumbs.
Butterfly sign. My butterfly sign was crappy. Here, hold on that. You can do it. Yeah! Butterfly!
Coco went on to sign over 1,000 words. She could understand about 2,000 words of spoken English, showing an impressive range of both emotional and cognitive abilities. Coco was also known for her love of cats. She got her first kitten on her birthday in 1984.
The reason that it stands out in people's memories is because there's an emotional surprise there.
And that's a good point, actually. This emotional connection she has with the kitten is also indicative of some kind of intelligence. Again, if you were going from the purely materialist point of view, this gorilla would only really care about its children, its mate, who's protecting it. If it was just about like reproduction and survival, that's it. But to pick up a cat, love the cat, want to take care of the cat, understand how to not hurt the cat, care about the cat, take care of the cat, that's compassion, right? That's some level of even maybe empathy. It combined with her ability to sign is pretty amazing. So I think this one doesn't have a lot of her actual conversations in it. Here, I think, is some of her actual conversation. Let's see if we can get some of that. Maybe not.
Mother might be in love with the daughter.
News about Coco made headlines across the world.
Coco, who's a
It's not. Where is my one where she... Oh, here, it's coming. Okay. This is actually the best conversation she has. She has a lot of really good ones, and I don't know why I don't actually have them here, but I don't. Oh, let's do this first. So this is her. I guess I'll read to you what she's saying. She just said, I am gorilla. I don't know if there's audio or not. I am flowers, animals. I am nature. Man, Coco love. Earth, Coco love. But man, stupid. Coco sorry. Coco cry. Nature, see you. Fix earth. Help earth. Hurry. Protect earth. I am gorilla. I am flowers. Animals. I am nature. And you can see her when she's signing this, she seems like almost uncomfortable. And I can kind of understand why, because humans like to destroy things they don't. When they see a mirror of themselves and it isn't pretty, they want to destroy it. So when a gorilla is telling you, I am nature, I'm the flowers, I am the earth, and I love man, I love people, but they're stupid because they're destroying nature. They're destroying the earth, and you have to hurry up and save nature. I don't know. I've seen other very similar conversations he seems to have. I don't know how you would really fake it for her to say these things over and over again. I mean, I guess you could definitely train her to do it technically and give her like really big rewards off camera whenever she does this speech or something. Like, you could do it. When you see like the history of her interactions with beings and you understand her pretty complex vocabulary, it makes sense to me that she could see sometimes. And if you've ever communicated with an animal, you can also understand that they're kind of confused about why we're so bad at this. Like, they're like, what aren't you getting, human? Like, why are you holding yourself as separate from all of this? Why do you think you're not nature? Why do you think you're not me? Right? Like, what is this disconnect? It's confusing to them, but more than that, it seems like it hurts their feelings. Like they're sad for us. Like, they know what we're missing and they wish we weren't missing it. But I actually think we're starting to not miss it anymore. I think we're starting to be able to hear and understand beings like Coco and not want to break the mirror. I think we're starting to really and I know a lot of us have been there for a long time. I think the rest of humanity is starting to really catch up with this idea that we're not just the only sentient ones. We're not the only conscious things, that we're not obviously the only living things, and that actually everything living has some kind of consciousness, has some kind of intelligence, might even know more than us about many things. Many, many things we've forgotten over time as we've become so disconnected. And so this is maybe best shown through this fad. I talked about it at the moment that it was happening. Someone sent it to me and I was like, this is so awesome and fascinating. In TikTok, one of the fads was talking to trees. and people said, the trees in there, here's a quote from Bria, I don't know, whoever, the tree in my yard can talk and move. And people were doing this. They were saying, if you can hear me, touch my shoulder, and they would just record themselves, and the trees behind them or to the side of them would seem to reach out and touch their shoulder with their branch. Again, tons and tons of people could have been faking this over and over and over again. I'm sure some people did fake it. But I also know you can talk to trees and they will talk back to you. Just like you can talk to animals and they will talk back to you. And this is, if this is happening and trending on TikTok, I have hope for humanity. Because I can talk to a tree. I can see what a tree is thinking or feeling. Like, I can understand a plant. much of the time, I'll say, not necessarily all the time. But if everyone else is starting to understand you can do that, like this is good times. Apparently Lizzo got in on this, and I think that's part of what made it really, really famous. So there's something we can thank Lizzo for. Thank you, Lizzo. Love you, Lizzo. Oh, Lizzo. She said, she asked if a plant on her patio could touch her hand, and then it does. And then some people tried to pretend that just means Lizzo is like special. So this is interesting too. There's an old episode of Mythbusters, and at the time I was so angry. This is actually when I stopped watching Mythbusters, because again, I love science. I'm a very logical person. I'm a very materialist sort of minded person. I just also have learned through gnosis that soul exists, spirit exists, that all sorts of spiritual abilities exist, and I can't deny that. I can't deny my own gnosis and experience. So I don't. But my true love, my original love is logic and materialism. And so I loved Mythbusters. I loved that they'd go in and logically go about proving or disproving something. And it's also encouraging scientific thought and like exploration. It was a cool show until this exact episode that this article is talking about. They said in an old episode of Mythbusters, plants that were played music or recordings of human voices grew better than those that weren't played any sound. And it's true. They did experiments like that. They did some other things. I also have this experience. I got a plant. He had one, like maybe half an inch of green stalk left, and the entire rest of this philodendron, I didn't know at the time, but it was a philodendron, was just dead brown, brittle leaves. And my friend was like, I can't keep plants alive. If you want to try to save this one, take it. And I was like, yes, poor thing. And I brought it to my house, and I had never done anything like this before, but I was like, I heard that if you play plants music, they like it. So I played him Bob Marley. I played him Bob Marley because Bob Marley's good vibes. So I played good vibe music to him. I think classical music would have been excellent too. I played Bob Marley all the time when I was gone. Not when I was home, because I didn't really want to listen to that much Bob Marley, but every time I was gone, which was most of every day, I left Bob Marley playing for this plant. He came back. He grew better than ever. All of his leaves would point straight up. I don't know if you've seen a philodendron, but their leaves don't point straight up. But he was so happy, and he was so loved, and he was so happy to be so loved that he was like celebrating life and like dancing and partying. And it's cool. But so anyways, the same episode of Mythbusters that did that, they supposedly said that this was unproven because they hooked up lie detector tests to the plants, and then they would hurt other plants nearby, and the plants with the lie detector tests on them would spike in energy. And so the idea was that they're communicating to each other instantly as one plant seemed to be threatened or got close to a flame or was threatened to be put into a garbage disposal was one of them. The other plants, even in other rooms, would have spikes in their energy that were indicative of stress or possibly fear. But they seriously said it was busted, even though they got that response. And I was like, you can't call yourselves serious people anymore, and the show is dead to me. Because that's a betrayal. If you can't admit something because you don't like it, you're not a scientist, you're an asshole. So I don't know if they were directed to do that or what, but they did. And here's another thing. This article isn't saying this, but I'll tell you this. You can go try the tree experiment outside. I'd say, like, don't take it too harsh if your tree doesn't do this. If you go out and you say, hey, if you can hear me touch my shoulder, and it doesn't, don't be too upset, because it is perhaps actually much harder for a plant to move that far than you think. Also, when you're outside, there's wind and there's other things, and there's just a lot going on. There's a lot that the tree might be doing, you know. So what I would do is I'd sit down with one of your indoor plants, if you have one that isn't, what's the right word for that? I don't know. That can move somewhat. So like a cactus wouldn't be a good one to choose to start with, but maybe like a fern or a philodendron, something that can easily kind of seem to bend or whatever. And you'll notice they don't normally seem to be moving, but if you were to leave a time lapse video on your plants all day, you'd see them moving, not only in response to the light, but also just kind of like, they just kind of a general back and forth sort of wiggle that they do. All plants do. And so your cactus does too. So you would see that. So they do move, right? And so you can sit with one of your plants and do the same thing we talked about with the animal communication. You can sit and you can talk to your plant. You can just say, hey, I love you. How are you doing? Do you want to show me anything? Here's the screen. Here's the box. I'm going to open it and see. And you can also ask it to move. You can say, if you're hearing me and reacting with me, can you move? And pick a part. It'll know which part you're looking at. Be like, move this part. Just like I did with the whale. And you know what? It will. So try it. Try it if that doesn't terrify you. And you'll see. And I'll tell you also, all of these things, they don't work for people who don't believe they're going to work. Do you know why? Because the thing you're communicating with will not feel love and respect from you, and it'll probably just ignore you. Just like you would if some asshole was like, oh, I'm going to talk to you, but like, you're dumb and I already know that. You'd be like, why would I interact with you? Right? So do your best to suspend your disbelief long enough to be truly objective and actually go into this, to see what will happen. And in the end, this is the truth. I don't know who Stephen Harper is, but this quote is true. He says, our relationship with nature is more one of being than having. We are nature. We do not have nature. We are nature. You're not separate from nature. You were created by nature. You're part of nature. You're nature expressing itself. If you want to replace the word nature with source or God or soul or spirit or life force energy, it works just as well. You can't have it. You just are it. You can be it. You can do it. You can't have it. It just is. It just exists. And if you understand that really deeply, then everything we just talked about makes perfect sense, because so is everything else. So you are it. It is you. You are an information field. It is an information field. You are consciousness. It is consciousness too. Yes, even a rock that we say and pretend is lifeless, even though we don't know what life is. And I say that as the highest scientific minds agree with it, not because I personally am too stupid to read like the dictionary definition of life, right? We don't actually know what it is. We have our working understanding, our working definition, and it has changed so frequently because just like all good minds, as we go, we gather more and more information, and so our understanding deepens or changes. So what is life? What is soul? What is consciousness? It's all these things. It's communication. It's feeling. It's emotion. It's also survival and reproduction. It's all these things, and all things do these things. All things do these things. So you can communicate with anything. You can communicate with your computer. You can communicate with a wall. So it might not be that interesting. And then the wall can't move and reach out and touch you. And if it could, now something bad might be happening. Right? But there's a level of consciousness to everything. And you can at least get information about it, is what it would feel like. Instead of from it, you wouldn't be maybe communicating with it per se. Although you are. But what it might seem like or feel like is actually that you're just like receiving input about it. Right? Like, so if you're traveling somewhere, you're afar and you're like, oh my God, is my house burning down right now? You could just reach out in your mind. You could imagine your house very closely. You could imagine yourself going up to your house. You could be like, house, hey, I love you. How are you? Are you burning? And it'd be like, no, dude, I'm not. You'd be like, cool, thank you. Yes, even your house could give you information. Might not seem alive in the way that you define life, but you don't know what life is. So what do you know? So I hope you have fun with it. I hope you have fun being alive. I hope you have fun having consciousness. I hope you have fun understanding that animals are probably smarter than most humans you know in most ways, if not like they don't know calculus. But like Coco, they understand more about so much of especially that which we have forgotten, which is that we are nature and we are not separate from it and we never could be. So Transhumanists, -1. Humanist, naturists, +100. We're winning by far, as always. And until you know it and communicate with everything around you in the giant web of nature and life and consciousness, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
It's a one-on-one lesson, so do your homework. Make your dome hurt while up on earth. My bones are blessed from holy dirt. Vibes manifested to words that told me search for verbs and adjectives to describe birth. Worth more than one can speak, while the tongue feeds a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies, disguised as truth, and spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the tube. A place where the God is food, it's sorcery. To recreate a God forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hear me flow like the eye of Horus Penio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me? Go.
Sculpted from the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional 3 ain't beating me on top of the 4th. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with ink drizzle, branched out. Try quiet your lamps now. Was sentient past the matter that they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they over understand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber, kosher, wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing maggots, they stuck on Android screens now. I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the backs of the savage. Them clasped hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. But nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking run.